Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 10th of June meeting of WasteNet. Are there any apologies today? I have one from Councillor Christine Menzies. Any others at this stage?
I'll just have to get away just before 11 if we're going that long, Mr. Chair.
Certainly. If I can have a mover for the apologies, please. Thank you, Rangi. And second, Mayor Scott. The minutes for the 8th of April. Are there any errors, omissions or matters arising that are not correct in those minutes, please? It appears that everyone is happy. If I can have a mover and a seconder that the minutes of April as presented be confirmed as a true and complete record, please. Thank you, Rangi Pottinger and Mayor Scott. If we go to page 7 of the agenda, the WasteNet Strategic Plan. And the purpose of this report is to finalise and seek endorsement on the strategic plan. Fiona, is there anything that you want to highlight in that of particular note? Although I do note on your table, the colour coding doesn't have an index.
Okay, I can add that in. There weren't any substantial changes. It was more just to incorporate some of the feedback into those first few columns on the left-hand side around target condition and the like, but the plan itself has remained largely unchanged from what we presented and discussed in May.
The boxes at the bottom in impact monitoring are vacant on mine. Is that?
So if everybody's happy with those metrics, that's what we'll populate and present in a graph form, a simple graph form going forward. So each time that we revise and update the strategic plan and represent it to indicate progress, we'll include those graphs and show the metrics there.
Any other comments or feedback from members, please? Neville's happy. Rangi?
Will those graphs be combined regional, or they'll be broken down into just regional?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah.
I really like the way that that's set out now with the text in the left-hand column. So it's been recommended that we receive the report. It appears that we're not seeking any amendments. If I can have a mover that we receive the report WasteNet Strategic Plan for the 2024-25 year and approve implementation of the strategic plan and cross out recommendation number 2. If I can have a mover and a seconder, please. Neville, thank you. Mayor Scott, seconded. Thank you. Turning to page 10 on the, all those in favour, say aye. Against, carried. Turning to page 10 on the agenda, the WasteNet financial standing and proposed budget. The key component in this is the WasteNet administration fee on material deposited at the landfill, and 3 options have been presented. I think we just need to take a brief break for a moment. We'll just hold it because we've fallen below our quorum. Councillor Pottinger has left the room, so if we can... Thank you. And once it shows up, you'll let him in.
Yep.
Thank you. So we'll continue in terms of the proposed budget. As I said, the components of the admin fee on material lodged at the regional landfill. 3 options have been presented to us in the report, and before we discuss these, we need to have a look at the budget and also consider what is funded by reserves and what is funded by the admin fee. I also want to look at a couple of the assumptions in the budget. So rather than looking at the recommendations at this stage, are there any thing that you want to add, Fiona, before we talk about some of the detail that's in the budget?
No, nothing at this stage.
Right. Any comment from members, please? One of the assumptions that is in this appears to be that the dip that we've had in volumes going to the landfill last year is an aberration, and the trend is not likely to continue. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So we've used more of a long-term trend to forecast what the volumes would be for this coming year. So the year that we're in has seen a slight reduction in waste volumes, which will obviously have a corresponding impact on revenue and costs. But for the budget proposed, we've used a longer-term forecast, just, I guess, a little bit more on the conservative side.
And if the downturn continues from last year, what are the implications?
There aren't hugely significant implications because it largely balances between income and expenditure. So that's not too significant, but I guess it's just to make sure that on the whole it's representative.
Councillor Pottinger, you had a question.
Yeah, it seems like a double-edged sword where the government are instructing us to reduce waste to landfill, and by doing that we're diminishing our revenue, and then we have to adapt to that revenue or find another source of revenue, which can only come from rates rather than obviously the landfill fee. So I don't know, with our targets we should be, I mean, they're saying reduce waste to landfill, whereas I've always said having an A-grade landfill such as AB Lime, it's the best place for it. You know, it's contained, all the gases are contained, they're used, it's a symbiotic system. But I don't know, it's the message from Wellington that has always confused me. I think they're a bit theoretical and not actually awake to what's happening in real life. I think there's too much of that still happening. Whereas we are more literally at the coalface. We are handling it day by day, month by month. So it's a real tough one when we work through this. But I do believe that was an aberration.
Okay, and if we're incorrect on that, then in our reserves we have sufficient to use if necessary. But I guess with any budget, the monitoring of it as we go through the year is the key, and if we need to look at things, we can do that. Mayor Scott.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I've got a couple of questions. In terms of the reserves, I mean, they're sitting up there at nearly $2 million. I've got a little bit of concern about using the reserves to fund that kind of operational stuff, because once we stop using the reserves, we're going to get a massive big jump in costs as opposed to an incremental cost. But what is a good reserve balance to have for potential expenditure going forwards? Because, I mean, it's hard to gauge from the information I've got whether $2 million is too much or just enough, bearing in mind we've got the contract renewal coming up and there'll be some costs around that. But just what is a sort of good amount to be sitting on in that cash reserve? And that might not be able to be answered today, but
it's a very useful question, and one that I've been thinking about a bit as time. And you're right, with contracts coming up in 27, we are likely to incur or need to be conservative, I guess, a bit through there. What is in our standing agreement is that surplus from one year is able to be used for operation the next year, but we ran at a deficit last year in any case, and yeah, it's a matter of balance. With the reserves, my I think principle is that reserves should be used in a way that actually benefits the whole region rather than specific items, and if we need to draw it down to take care of the bumps and hollows as we go through time, I'm quite comfortable with that.
Because I don't have the history as to how those reserves built up, but I mean, one could assume that at times we may have been overcharging, and we're looking at increasing the charge now. So I can see the logic in potentially using them to water that down a bit, but yeah, I just see a bit of risk in there as well.
There was, and just slightly different, there was raised at our previous meeting, or at least earlier meetings, the notion of having stickers on the bins, particularly on the recycling bins, so that it was clearer. Gore doesn't have stickers highlighting the good, the bad to go into the bins. Does Invercargill or Southland have that at all?
Yes, Invercargill and Southland has got the stickers that we designed recently to go on the yellow bin, but we would be having that for Go once Go moves into the recycling space.
And how is that funded?
That was funded through WasteNet
Right.
funding. It was
Which
set
is
at,
appropriate.
yes, which
Yes.
was just set at the start of the year under education and communication, and these this was part of the campaign that MFE had required us to do.
So I saw that as an example that if they didn't have stickers, that would be something that's quite appropriate to even use the resources for.
To add to that, any of the new bins that are going out now for Southland District Council and Go District, Invercargill City Council has got those stickers applied by the contractor, and a bin clip also added to the bin.
The education program shows a reduction from last year with the comment that reduction in school education program due to Enviro schools being funded directly by councils. I didn't understand that. Are all three councils actually contributing to that?
The education and communication budget comes from the WasteNet budget, meaning it's for all three councils, but we have to tailor the education to how the councils have got their curbside collection services. Like, for example, Go doesn't have recycling, so we tailor that accordingly when we use the budget.
Well, with Enviro schools,
Yeah.
it says funded directly by the councils.
Yes, if we are funding Enviro schools, we haven't funded them last year, but before we used to fund them, it goes out of the WasteNet reserve.
Right. So I would have thought that education programs is a WasteNet cost,
Yes,
not
that's right.
a council cost.
Yes, education and communication is a WasteNet cost.
Yes, but the comment here says it's been funded directly by councils.
To clarify that, Enviro schools had individual councils funding them through their long-term plans. Jason, correct me if I'm wrong. So our engagement, strategy and engagement team had funded Enviro schools some funding through the long-term funding for their, because they have a holistic approach.
Right.
They just don't deal with waste.
Okay. The staff costs. Now, this shows the director at 1 full-time equivalent, contract manager at 0.9, and engagements 1, contracts and admin 1. I would have thought with Fiona coming on board that these figures might have changed a bit for the coming year. And I'm wondering what might be a more equitable way of doing it that actually reflected the actual costs rather than just setting aside a certain part of the full-time equivalent. And wonder whether it would be appropriate actually for these other functions, the contract manager, finance and engagement, to be charged to WasteNet on an hourly basis rather than a pro rata or a full-time equivalent. Some thoughts around the table?
The full-time equivalent, Erin, are you?
I'm happy to make a comment around
Yeah.
that.
Thank you, Erin. But this shows the financial costs as one full-time equivalent.
If that's the case, that probably shouldn't be. Is that the financial costs or is that the contract administration costs?
Contract admin.
Yes, so the contract administration costs is a dedicated role.
And the contract manager at 0.9?
Is an almost dedicated role, with the remaining piece around the administration of the recycle staff contract.
Right, because as I said, I thought with Fiona coming on board, those figures might change a little bit.
I think the key piece from ICC's perspective is that we're holding those contract management costs as dedicated to WasteNet. If we aren't using all of those hours for WasteNet, we don't have anywhere to move those staff across to. What I would say is that when we have vacancies in that space, however, and we do have to pick it up from other staff, that's where you would see savings coming back in.
Okay. The engagement coordinator role is currently vacant, and so I'm wondering in the interim, rather than being a full-time position, whether it may be appropriate to actually have some part-timers engaged. Some feedback from staff. What's your view on that, Fiona?
Yeah, it's something that Erin and I have discussed previously around if we can't successfully recruit for that position, what are the other pathways? And I guess that's one of the things that we've talked about is whether we use contractors, consultants, or a part-time, like a different kind of a structure. That role has been advertised twice, to my understanding, unsuccessfully, so definitely worth a different approach.
And
Can I just note that although those positions are budgeted for, the costs aren't charged unless we have staff on board. Because the WasteNet staff actually all timesheet their time to the project or to the collaboration.
okay. Any other feedback in terms of the budget?
Just a follow-up question from that. So are there extra fees and charges in this year to do with those FTEs, or is it going to be consistent with previous?
Sorry, I missed that. Was that a question around whether or not there are additional positions or fees this year
Yeah, whether
previous years?
Yeah, whether you see there'll be more costs associated with those positions, or the hours put in. Is it going to be on par with previous years, noting Fiona's role?
Yeah, so exactly. So we haven't held Fiona's role for a full year previously, so we would see that increase. The other piece is, which was manageable within the existing budget, was around a contracts administrator, essentially to assist Annie with processing and managing the various different contracts under WasteNet.
Jason?
Can I please?
Yeah, one thing we need to be mindful of around WasteNet is we have been understaffed for a long period of time. The role to moving Fiona in has been great. It gives us a lead, somebody who's got that experience to drive stuff forward, but we have got a significant workload associated with the coming year as well. And having attended the solid waste, or the waste minimisation conference last year, or the past 2 years as well, we've got to remember how we compare maybe against some of our others. I think Clutha itself has got 4 staff working in waste space. A friend of mine who leads the sustainability and climate change team in Tauranga has 25. And so we've just got to remember if we want to do what we want to do, then we need to resource, and I think this is the best way to do that. And again, to Erin's point, Fiona's only been on board for 3 months, so understanding how her impact affects the operational side of WasteNet will take a little bit of time to work through. So I think what we've got now currently reflects, I guess, what we think is the need, but that's not to say that that is going to be the way it operates long term. We'll obviously have that opportunity to review, work through with Fiona what the focuses need to be. Obviously, we're gearing up towards contract renewals in 27, so that it's got a heavy contract side to it as we do that, because that work has to occur in the next 18 months. So that's sort of, from my view, I guess what we're building the staff around, and hopefully that allows us to achieve the outcomes that this the advisory group is pushing for.
And I think just adding to that, a lot of the work that we're wanting Fiona to take on is the work that we simply haven't been resourced to do to date. So as Jason says, starting to step into those contracts, looking at the WasteNet agreement, looking at the bylaw and the WMMP. So they're all sort of extras that are coming on as opposed to the work that we were already doing.
And it would be my expectation that in next year's budget there is a request for greater staffing numbers, particularly so that we can have something based at each of the councils. So if there's no further feedback in terms of the budget, there is. Mayor Scott.
Sorry, I feel like I'm hogging the microphone. Just one more, just in terms of the financial position and the debtors. That number is quite high, sort of double 30th of June 2023 at 4.2, just on page 13, at 4.2 million. And I know in the previous meeting we had some sort of outstanding debts going quite far back. Is that a number that we should be concerned about? And has that sort of, has work been done on those outstanding creditors? Some of them are like beyond 6 months.
Yeah.
Yes, so the ICC finance team have been doing some work on that in quite a broad-ranging thing. I guess one of the key changes being proposed is around more stringent control for that. So where those debitors are going overdue, to make sure that the process is being worked through and adhered to a little bit more stringently, and potentially leading to their access being revoked if we're not seeing those payment plans being come to fruition, which in some cases is what's happening. So definitely working and also looking at how, as WasteNet, we improve our financial management to improve our cash flow, so that like the things when the invoices go out for the like, how we're working internally to get payments made to improve that number.
Rangi.
Just following on from Scott's question, are these debtors, bad debtors, are they consistent? Are they the same people? And they, I take it, are commercial users. Now, do you ever intervene at a management level, like talking straight to their, chief executive, or saying, what the, wake your ideas up here? Because generally when you're providing a service, you actually stop the service if they're repeat offenders, and where else do they go? I don't know. I'm just coming from my experience in business, is that you don't keep flogging, dead horse, if these people are, because they are basically using WasteNet as a bank.
Yes, correct. And that's, I guess, where it's got to. There's been tried to be quite a proactive approach that hasn't been reciprocated, so that's where now it's been documented and will be communicated to all of the authorised users that should this eventuate, that your access will be revoked.
Yeah, like a 3-strike system or something. I mean, it gets quite, it's got to be, because you have got clients who pay at the appropriate time. And, yeah.
So I was going to work backwards through page 13 to get to 12. So is there any other comment, feedback in terms of the financial position?
Just one more, and this might be for a future meeting, but just want to kind of flag it because I see in there the ETS, and just wondering if at any stage we can look at, or have looked at, the methane that's captured at the landfill, because we're putting our charges up, but there's potentially money that can come back through that, and are we getting some of that benefit ourselves as the producers of the gas?
Well, Fiona might want to say something, but speaking with AB Lime, they have gone for the unique emission factor, and they are at Fiona, am I right, as good as they can get. That is, they are as good as they cannot do any more to achieve, even though they are capturing 99.99999, they still get charged for a mission. It's unbelievable.
Provide a little bit of background too, following on from our last workshop. I've gone back through the files and had a look at the history around how AB Lime came to the UEF. And when it was signalled that waste emissions were going to be pulled into the ETS, there was a discussion between AB Lime and WasteNet around potential collaboration to achieve that UEF. And a paper went through, so this was obviously some time ago, to WAG, giving the different pathways of either collaborating in partnership to pursue that UEF or having a standalone arrangement for the ETS. And at that time it was decided by the WAG that they wouldn't take up that partnership approach. So I guess subsequent to that, as part of the contract meeting, there's been discussions with AB Lime around revisiting that. They are open to it, but they did signal that because their investment and expenditure has been so significant that they would want those discussions to occur at a senior level.
So what future steps are necessary then?
So it would be discussion, I guess, at the sort of senior level, and I can present a paper on the costs and implications for them, but they have said it's several millions of dollars for them to obtain that UEF and to then maintain it, because they have to reapply every year. There's extensive monitoring and OPEX that's associated with that.
So would you like to see a paper come through on that?
I think it'd be useful, and just in terms of us even doing political advocacy around getting that back through as well, because that's a part that we can play that they potentially can't, that can help all of us. So it'd be useful, I think, to get an understanding of how it all works.
Right, if there's
Sorry.
Neville.
Yes, it would be just, as Rob said, the thing about that is also that it'll give us a clarification and clarity about what AB Lime are actually spending on their own business, and for us and their charges, we can explain, you know, here's the expenditure that it costs to produce, and then waste, the in the waste itself, you know, to cover it, to attract the methane, etc. You know, would be really good.
Right. Yeah.
Look, going back to those discussions when WAG made when we made the decision not to go down that path of investing, I remember the discussion. It was decided that AB Lime are in the landfill business, and they were doing it, and obviously they would then their investment they would have to recoup, but they had also a lot of other commercial clients besides us, and so and then it was deemed that we would pay that ongoing investment from AB Lime would be obviously shown up in their charges, which it is. And I think there's some consistency. We need to look at that. And I mean, yeah, obviously we discussed. It'd be interesting to drag the minutes up from that meeting to see what points were put forward. But I think you've got to really watch it if we start dabbling into their business. Yeah, no, that's all.
Do you recall roughly when those discussions took place?
No.
Right, are we talking about a year ago, 2 years ago?
I
Long
think
ago.
It's around 2013, 14, 15.
Okay,
That's when the-
so you've only got 3 years to look at, hopefully. Yes.
Just a comment, I don't see it as dabbling in their business, I think, because they do a great job. I think it's just getting an understanding and perspective from us, so that anything that we can do to help as well. So yeah, I think getting that understanding is my objective around it.
Yeah, I guess the other component as well is the regulations that apply to the way that domestic waste from the kitchens, etc., by 2030, effectively, we need to have another bin in place. So it would be helpful in the near future, Fiona, to have a report that actually looks at advancing a case to government that for our landfill, that what's in the MFE various regulations of requiring separation of that at source, advancing that with the Minister in terms of whether it should apply here. And given that the gases taken off are used for heating, there's a significant environmental benefit from that, but also it means that the alternative of drying the lime using coal isn't needed, which is again another environmental benefit. So the way that we operate actually gives us a better environmental outcome than complying with the future rules. So I think it's at the stage now where we should look at advancing that. And I'm aware that some work has been done on site, some research. Ian?
I think, again, it shows this disconnect from Wellington, because if you look into the science of a good landfill, the green waste is an essential element for it's a bioreactor, the whole thing. It needs it to break down everything. And so if you are hell-bent on removing green waste or organics, then it's wrong. It's wrong against the science. And again, so they don't understand, actually, there are people in Wellington with no idea about this. And this is what worries me about, central government, is you've got, these people who are oblivious to facts and what's actually happening. So it's a bit scary. I don't know how we get through to them, because we haven't got through in the last, 14 years that I've been here. So.
Well, you'll recall that we had senior people from MFE talking to us last year with two different areas of responsibility that saw it as their task to implement without flexibility the government regulations. And so it brings it back to us to actually take an alternative to government.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, and no doubt it will continue to be frustrating.
All right, let's return to the task at hand in terms of the agenda. What is set out in the report is three options in terms of the way that we fund the budget moving forward, and these are set out on pages 10 and 11. So there's three options there in terms of where the fee is at $8.05 without any drawdown on reserves, whether the fee's at $1.64 with some drawdown on reserves by $375,000, and option C, no additional increase in the gate fee, the admin fee, and a drawdown on reserves of $471,000. Open the floor for feedback and comment, please.
I think I'd support option B at this stage, Mr. Chair. I think that using the reserves for more of their one-off strategic things rather than ongoing, as I said before, operational stuff would be my preference. Although no one likes increasing charges either. But
Ian?
Yeah, I agree with B. I think, again, we've talked prior to this meeting, we had a wee discussion about what's happening with rates around, general rates and stuff. And if you're not aware, to not put that very small increase in, then it's going to catch you next time, and it's going to be a bigger increase. So I think as long as everything's been calculated correctly, then I'm in favour of B.
And in effect, what it means is that the reserves are being used for the strategy part of the budget, and I see that as quite appropriate. Neville, any feedback from yourself?
No, I've looked at it too, and I think option B is probably the best way forward in myself. Mm-hmm. But just the $1.64 increase, why an odd number?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I guess that's the resulting shortfall, taking away those strategic. So, yeah, that's how that odd number has come up with.
While we're looking at that, I just want to get an update in terms of what each of the councils are doing, particularly in terms of recycling. Now, in the case of Gore, we're looking at bringing back the third bin either in April next year or next financial year, which is what was in our draft annual plan that went out. Yes. And given the feedback that we've had, we're going to have to reconsider that approach, and that's happening on Wednesday of this week. So I'm not too sure whether the other councils sit. I know I was taken a little bit by surprise by what's in the Invercargill approach. So where's that sitting at present? Yes.
Well, during our LTP, it was for there, and we voted against it. At a 1.6 million start-up cost with the bins and everything, and then an ongoing cost of 600,000 a year. So we looked at that cost and what we would get out of it, and the council voted against it. Considering that you look at the amount of glass, and if you look at your own use of glass, potentially some of the bins would only have a couple of bottles or a couple of glass things in there. And if you really look at, if you take this, the impact of vehicle movements and everything like that, you've got these trucks going around an extra circuit, picking up something that's not even, it's hardly, it's empty, basically, glass. And so the alternative, and I've mentioned this to Fiona, and I've talked to people, the industry is concerned, is that bottle banks and stuff like that is something really worth looking at. You've got the two main suppliers of glass, and that is liquor stores and supermarkets. And if we can encourage the public into delivering back to, I mean, obviously there's going to be a cost with this. There's going to be a cost which will have to be worked out. That, you know, the depository bins get emptied by Wasteco, but again, it's got to be way less than an operational 600,000 a year for ICC, which is crazy. I thought, but the council voted against it.
Right. So what that means is that your recycling bin is for everything.
Yep.
But you're encouraging people to take the glass somewhere else.
And I believe that we can do that with education, and people own it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So for Southland, we've just gone out for consultation last week, so we've got the 3 different options going out for the public to comment on. So whether we do the status quo, whether we put in a whole new collection with a third bin, or whether we have an alternate connection for our, so we do recycling once a month and the glass once a month, so no extra driving, but having that extra bin. So that's out for consultation. We're going to hear back by the 5th of July, and we'll do our deliberations after that. So we don't have a position yet.
Right. Aaron.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify just on the ICC one. Whilst there was a bottle bank option that was put forward, at this stage the council's decision was not to go with the glass bin or to go with the bottle bank option, but to revisit glass options as part of the tendering of the new contracts for 2027.
Right. So
it'll be essentially be on pause until then.
Yeah, look, I've got to jump in there. The bottle bank option that was put forward to us was not a substantially involved one, to the point, and I think it was only put in as, and this is my belief, that it was put in just as something to make up the numbers, without any serious thought given to how it would be implemented, considering that one of the recycling proponents, Mr. Becker, was totally against it, and that was his personal view against bottle banks. And I think if you look around the country, the cities and towns that use that dedicated bottle bin, they've just made that decision and not really thought it through. In fact, it actually goes against council's, our ICC's own climate change policy, where we are trying to, and we actually state this, reduce vehicle movements. Now here we are introducing a whole new series of vehicle movements to pick up very little glass. Now, you know, this has always amazed me in council, how contradictory we can be sometimes, you know, in doing one thing, but we're actually breaching our own policies. So I think we've got a lot more thoughts got to go into this, and before we re-look at a third bin, which to me has no logic.
Your mayor at the meeting suggested that he was looking at WasteNet to actually pick up the issue. Is there really anything that we can be doing at this stage, or as I think it actually lies with the individual councils to work through? Yes, Scott.
Yeah, I think this is one of the idiosyncrasies of a shared service, but going out and asking individual opinions for the individual councils. So I think until we've got a position from SCC, it might pay to park it and then see if there's any synergies between the three councils on where they go going forwards, because we've got three totally different approaches. It's going to be difficult to coordinate centrally at WasteNet. So my suggestion would be to wait until after July when we've deliberated on ours. Yeah,
good thought. And I wanted to raise it at this stage to ensure that there were no budgetary implications as part of the budget, and I should have raised it when I was we were on that. Neville.
The only implication would be going forward for us as WasteNet is be parts to our contracts, and you know, if one council decides it wants to have glass, well, you know, it's a big implication to us itself. You know, the contracts.
Yes, but that'll be a cost to Gore that it would need to negotiate if there's any change.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, that it needs to be implemented to not only to the ratepayer, but it's going to be an added cost that if you do implement this, it's at your cost, not as a group cost.
Yes. All right, so what that means is that we can then consider the motions or the recommendations that we've got. So I'll deal with the first. Do you want to deal with them all together? You comfortable with that? It seems that the feeling around the table is that we run with option B. So I'd move then that we receive the report, WasteNet's financial standing and proposed budget for 24-25. We approve the proposed budget for 24-25, and we approve the mechanism to fund the budget deficit by way of option B by an increase to the gate fee of $1.64 as set out there in the agenda. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Mayor Scott, any further discussion?
One clarification here on the gate fee. So this WasteNet admin fee at AB Lime, now does that only get applied to the waste that arrives from the three councils, or does it get applied, that gate levy, to all the other waste that they get in?
That's correct. It applies to all authorised users.
All right. Okay. So everybody, right?
Yeah. So I've moved that. If I can have a seconder, please. Mayor Scott, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Then turn to page 17 of the agenda, WasteNet Key Performance Indicators. And so on pages 18, 19, 20 and 21 and also 22 is the data for the various components we get a report on. Is there any discussion resulting from that? think it's for information and just reinforces some of the trends that we've been talking about. Yeah.
A question that I do have, and it may not be relevant to exactly this, but it will be at some stage, is the separation of green waste. You know how we talked about separating glass. Now, no one's been able to answer this for me, so I'm going to put it on record here. If it was diverted, say we had a separate bin, a green bin, now what are the emission factors for that green bin? It's got to go to this place. Now, what are those emission factors? Obviously, I've seen how AB Lime works, and I've seen the science. We've had it demonstrated in WasteNet, the capture, 7 different stratas that they capture, and then the liquid that comes off, and then also the sealing of the WasteNet pods, of the cell pods that they have in the landfill, and then the pipe reticulation, they catch all the gas. Now, what clever science is going to be at this dumping ground for the green waste that is going to capture 100% of the emitted decomposing gas? So no one's, all they want to do is stand around and go, yeah, we've diverted green waste, but then they've actually created the gas is no longer captured.
And in the case of Southland, the environmental impact is worse.
It's unbelievable. And again, Wellington, I tell you what, I don't know, I just struggle with the logic coming out of it.
It doesn't come into force until 2030, and I imagine between now and then there will be a whole new regime set up in terms of the standard you have to comply with the way that it's managed and the way that the gases are collected.
It seems to me they don't obviously teach science at high school anymore, do they? Or, I don't know. They stopped teaching maths ages ago. I found that out.
Mayor Scott, are you going to?
Just a question on page 24. There's that graph there, the second one in the middle, and it's got SRLAU. So it's got Gore, ICC, SDC, and the different colours, and then that brown colour on top. I'm not sure what the SRLAU is.
It's just pivot tables, and I'm unable to take out those codes. So SRLAAU stands for Southland Regional Landfill Authorised Users. That's all authorised users, including councils.
Oh, yeah, cool. So is that spike between March and April anything
Yes.
to be concerned about?
It's just a stacked graph, so that's the overall waste.
Cool, thank you.
The amount of material that came from Blue Cliffs was quite significant going into the regional landfill, so I wonder if that was the component that jumped up.
That spike is from that Blue Cliffs.
Yeah, and that's referred to in the footnotes on page 18.
So it won't be under Southland District Council because that waste from Blue Cliffs was taken to the landfill as an authorised user, separate authorised user.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other feedback in terms of the data that we've got presented there? Appears to be none. So if I can have a mover and a seconder, please, that we receive the report WasteNet Key Performance Indicator Update and note the materials discarded waste to landfill and diversion data and trends.
Yeah, I'll move that.
Thank you, Ian. Seconder, thank you, Neville. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Page 25 of the agenda, the WasteNet Education and Communication Activity Update. And this looks fairly straightforward, despite being a number of pages that's there. Any feedback or comment, please? I see under the WasteNet website, phase 2 is to be completed in 2024, and a little bit further down refers to updates early June, and also completion of the streamlining of the interface by the end of May just passed. So any update on that? Where's the website sitting?
The website is still under construction in phase 2 because there are many problems that we are facing with the previous website that we had, and we are unable to extract that information to be able to use in the new website. So we are doing freshly from the start, and that is why all these delays are coming up. And we do not want to blow out the budget. That's the other part to it.
I'm really pleased that there's an inventory being done as part of that work.
Yes.
If you had a certain type of waste, where you take it to.
Yes, the item search database is on the priority list, but and the authorized users log into the landfill and doing a special waste permit. That is being sorted out because the authorized users are facing many problems with the current website, having to do everything manually. So these two are the priorities at this stage. We are facing some difficulties with the permit user page at this stage, but again, we are freshly coding it right from the start to make everything look hassle-free for them.
It would be really helpful once that part of it is set up to actually have a report, so it's documented as part of our agenda and public in terms of where the different types of waste can go to, because so far this year we've had the battery recycling set up recently in Invercargill, soft plastics, and it's about to happen in Gore. So it would be great as part of what we consider to actually see that list as well.
Another thing we are working on is how easily staff can update the website rather than going to the developer for every little updates. So that is also being built into while we are doing the current coding. So there is a little bit of delay, but yeah, we will be having something there soon. A proper resources page and an item search database, a recycling game. These are all on the list.
A couple of things. The first one is the organics feasibility study. It started in May. What budget did we assign to that? Can I ask?
So it has a total budget of $100,000, and $75,000 of that was from MFE levy funding.
Okay. See, and that again, this is I'm a bit worried about this. The way it. What sort of parameters did they have? I mean, obviously this is not brand new. We're not the first council to do this, and I'm just wondering what are we after?
So they're conducting a regional wide, so they're looking at all different areas, feasibility study, and I guess it's kind of a two-pronged approach. So they are engaging directly with a raft of stakeholders, so businesses, councils, and considering household and the like. And then as part of that, the second path will be to present suggestions or options on what the different options are for dealing with that material. So that's where some of those earlier points that you've talked around about emissions would come into play. So they might say, for example, that you've got options of composting, biodigesting. These are the pros and cons. These are the emissions associated with the different options.
Okay, and are they aware of the impact on the landfill, the actual science on the landfill?
Yes, we've asked them specifically to consider that.
If they pull it out?
Yeah.
So they are aware of that?
Yes, yeah. And that is one of the options we've asked them to specifically look at. Is that the best pathway? Just status quo. Right.
Yep. Okay. No, that's fine. So the second question is regarding, obviously this is about education, and now we're bin inspections. Now, I don't know how many years I've been asking about bin inspections, and the last I knew about it was with ICC. It was health and safety issues for the actual inspectors, for them to be going along, lifting lids, having a look, and the reception they got from the landowners. Now, where are we with that? To make sure the recycling bins are being used correctly.
Yeah, so there's 3 different work streams under that. So we've got the provision in this year's plan for the bylaw, and that will quite clearly set out what or how the process is to be managed, including a 3-strike system, how some of the other councils use. We've also obviously got the education piece to try and improve recycling, and there is provision in the budget as well for a bin inspector, whether that's contracted out most likely under WasteCo. So there's provision in there to get that underway this year.
because you can't have a policy without the inspection. It's meaningless, isn't it, to have the bylaw? Otherwise, it's just being used as a multi-purpose bin, which it currently is. So what is the current contamination rate at? It's about 20-odd% at Recycle South. Yeah.
Around 18 to 19%.
18 to 19.
And 20 is the standard in New Zealand.
The
across
20
other
is the standard in New
councils.
Zealand. Okay, so obviously the rest of New Zealand, if we're achieving par with that, if not less, without any inspections, and other councils are achieving 20% with inspections, yeah. I'm not sure where we're going to go with this one.
Well, it's a cost to us of a significant amount because of the amount of contamination. So any improvement we're able to achieve is of benefit to WasteNet economically.
Yeah, but that say that 18% was non-recyclable stuff that should have gone in the red bin. That would have been a cost at AB Lime. I mean, it's still going there indirectly, except a bit slower. So I think it's the key thing is not so much the waste volume, it's the actual contamination of valuable recyclable material that it's doing. I guess that's my thought on its importance.
Neville.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I've just got a couple of questions. The fridge magnets, are they going to be like small things, and what's on them? Because I haven't actually seen one. And the other thing too is that as part of the submissions that came forward to council was about the labelling for any recycled materials are very small. They're not age friendly at all, and it becomes a problem too with the notice on the bins. Very small writing. That,
so when we put out the stickers, many households have stuck that onto their pantry or to the fridge. So to get them to, put it back on the bin, we thought we might come up with some magnets, fridge magnets, which has got, because they want to know before reaching the bin, they want to know what can be recycled and not go to the bin and then decide. So that is perfect sense. So we have decided to have some A5 magnets which says what can go in your recycle bin, and some and a small calendar of when their collection is due. That is what we are thinking of, but still to be designed.
Is that provided for in the budget for this year?
Under the education and communication,
Right.
yes.
But your concern, Neville, is the size of the printing that's on it. So
yes,
it can be read.
and also that you've answered my question about what needs to be recycled, because as we know, it's getting less and less, right? And who knows the numbers? Do you know it off by heart in your mind? Not every average person would.
Yes.
So those are the kinds of things that.
So that sticker is going to have a little section, the fridge magnet is going to have a little section of the common household items that are plastics 1, 2 and 5, for them to clearly see over there and say, okay, this is number 1, so this is similar to what's there, rather than having to look at the bottom of the plastics and then determine.
Jason.
No, I think this comes back to another point too that Councillor Pollinger has raised around product stewardship in the past, and that is a piece of work that the government is leading now through MFE with, I guess, those key contributors to try and improve some of that. Now that we do have standardised curbside collection requirements, is that product stewardship should hopefully improve over the next period of time. But that is a piece of work that's being developed to require better information and more consistency around it.
To add to Jason's comment, when we were at the Wastemans last week, the week before, I was in touch with some of the MFE staff, and what they had communicated was that they're going to bring back the container return scheme. So would be good to see, wait for some time to see when that's going to happen, and then decide on our future options.
I guess, with your Harmonian point that you raised, Neville, is that when you buy something in the supermarket, and come to dispose of it later. The printing that's on most products is so small that you need a magnifying glass for elderly people or people that don't have perfect eyesight to read. So is there anything that we can do to actually advocate for something that's more user-friendly?
Yeah, so 14 years on WasteNet, and Jason's right, going back, MFE were sitting in the council chamber talking about product stewardship 14 years ago. So there should not be, you shouldn't have to worry about the size of the printing on the label. I mean, you should for the ingredients, just in case you have an allergy, but all plastics should be recyclable. They should be in a recyclable thing. It should be a no-brainer. And where are they? Who has the power? I mean, the government has the power to actually restrict products being sold that are not in recyclable containers. So, boom, it's again, sorry I keep talking about Wellington, but that's where all our problems are.
So would you like WasteNet to write to the Minister expressing that very issue?
Oh, you
that
draw
all
some
plastics
pictures as well, yeah.
Yes.
Use a colouring pencil might help, but yeah, sorry, I mean, 14 years, you know, and it's just going round and round again, and it might be new to some people here, but far out product stewardship, it's so simple. It is so simple, yet it's just not happening.
All right, any further discussion on the education and other information that we've got there? Let me just check my copy. It is a very good way of the way it's in the report. Thank you, Fiona, with each of those little reports that's there. No, I've got nothing else. So we've got a recommendation that we receive the report and endorse the education engagement activities for 24-25. If I can have a mover and a seconder, please. Moved Neville, seconded Mayor Scott. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Which brings us to the end of the public excluded agenda. So I will move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceeding of this meeting, mainly for consideration of the minutes of the public excluded session held on 8th of April this year, and secondly, a request for funding from Recycle South, an optical sorting unit. Can I have a seconder, please? Ian, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against,